No, it's right now, Shane. Keith's just going to be a couple minutes late, but I'm hopping on. Hey. Start building up. Who's all here tonight? Where's all my peeps at? It'll be 8 p.m. It's 8 p.m. Mountain, Shane. Hi, everyone. Checking in. Keith's going to be just a couple minutes late, but I thought I'd hop on, get everyone up. See everyone's day was. There you are, Stoner. Wonder if you're going to be here. I'll make sure I look good. Lip gloss. Did you get your dessert, Stoner? All right, here he is. Whoop, whoop. Here he is, everybody. The man, the myth, the legend. Keith Knight. Hi.
Forrest Mommy, I am so sorry that I'm late. I usually pride myself on being on time, but a number of things got in the way. Thank you for having me on.
This is that kind of show where that can happen, so it's all good. It's not as professional as your show, so you know. How are you today?
I am doing fine. Just had a meeting with a number of friends. We talked about the concept of the David and Goliath award. Like if we had to give that as an award to someone who was a David standing up to the Goliaths of the world, the media, the politicians, big pharma, the military industrial complex, who would it be and why? And that's what I've been focused on pretty much all day. How are you doing?
I'm good. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yes, my name is Keith Knight. I work at the Libertarian Institute. I run a channel on Odyssey and YouTube that tries to provide free, non-advertised videos to help people sort of educate themselves freely. We always hear the progressives say, we believe in free education. And by that, we mean taxpayer funded, which is about as dumb as saying the military is free, is to say that education is free. No, they just want the state to monopolize compulsory education. So with that in mind, I try to provide an alternative to that, helping people escape mind control, seeing through propaganda, and providing a historical analysis. I try to have a number of professors on for interviews to discuss things like economics and philosophy. That is what my channel is primarily focused on. I think I'm at like 728 videos at this point. I also try and do book reviews because reading books can be very time consuming. And sometimes there's like 5 points that are really good.
Reading books is hard.
It is. Well, it's just so time consuming. It's like, all right, I've been doing this for 20 minutes and the author's kind of going on something. I could be watching Everybody Loves Raymond. It's so much easier to watch TV. So it's difficult. I try to provide a lot of book summaries so people can reap the great benefits of the books without having to bear the high cost, the opportunity cost of spending so much time reading the books. That is what my primary focus is.
And as I've mentioned before, like, I appreciate your style. I've told you a million times, I'm like, I love your voice. And yeah, I can learn. You're just so easy to learn from and listen to, which is like kind of a big deal for someone who wants to teach people. Like you kind of have people have to want to listen to, you know? So I appreciate you and what you're doing.
Well, thank you. Yeah, some of my biggest motivators were people like Don Lemon and Rachel Maddow and Sean Hannity, who 42 minutes a night get people's attention and talk about absolute nonsense that's irrelevant the next day and doesn't really give you a conceptual understanding of topics like history, philosophy, economics, morality, religion, any of these things. You can watch those 24-hour channels and not reap anything productive. Like the second you're done watching, the news is later irrelevant. And part of that is the first version of history is more or less always a mistake. It's not like people get things right the first time. So when the news is reporting breaking stories, they genuinely never have a full understanding of what's going on. But second, they deliver it to you with such confidence as though this is the way. There's something called the science that you have to follow. There's something called the law and you must obey it. There is the history, and that's how we learn about things. Well, realizing that not only are we fallible, but the people in these high positions are not only fallible, but often very self-interested, just like anyone else would be, is actually a big realization that the average person doesn't have. So what I try to do with my channel is make it so people can come on and click on any video at random and hopefully learn something within a few minutes before they before they click off. If you look at the average YouTube video, it's like a very short amount of time that people are willing to spend on content that that they don't agree with. So it's not just about being popular in the freedom movement. If everyone hated me, I wouldn't like it, but I could live with it. My goal is to provide a free educational archive for people who are not really interested in our things, but are willing to learn.
And who could hate you? No one would ever hate you for that. Even today, I listened to your interview with Chrissy today. I was like, yeah, you have everybody on and like all sorts of different kind of people. And it was great. Like, it's good. So I had fun meeting you. So I met you in person recently. If you remember, it wasn't that long ago.
If I remember, oh, okay. It was a time joke, not a drinking joke. All right. I just had to make sure.
No, I would be the one who would remember because of that stuff.
I just had to make sure. I was treating it like such a vacation just because I've been working so hard. I intentionally left so I live in Chandler and you and I met in Tucson, which is like an hour and a half away. And I said, if I bring my computer, I am going to work when I get down there. I'll be answering emails. So I left my computer down there. I guess my subconscious gave myself a blank check to drink without accountability. So sorry if that was a bad first impression. or anything.
I was there very much on vacation. I was like, I'm not part of the Arizona LP at all. So I wasn't going to be like doing the business stuff. Like I came down there to have a good time and I haven't gone anywhere like lately with the COVID and everything. So, it was a total trip. It was a total vacation. So yeah,
it's so cool just to meet sane people, just to see a human face and shake hands and look in their eyes. You wouldn't think that that's such a big deal, but like all the restaurants, they still have employees wearing masks and stuff that I don't even go anymore. I will literally walk into a place, and if I see that the staff is masked, I will go, you know what? I got to go somewhere else. Not just because it's like me taking some, just I want to know which places aren't mandating masks so I know where to shop in the future. This is an organization that really cares about, they really have this empathetical side of, gosh, if I were working an 8-hour shift, would I want something right up against my face so I could talk like this and you can barely hear a fucking word that comes out of my mouth? And then it's just so inappropriate to ask people to carry such a burden. And look, I got it in December of last year, I guess. And it's not pleasant, but it's not worth throwing your life away indefinitely until Tony Fauci, a guy with worse credibility than probably anyone on the planet, tells you that it's okay to go outside. Why would you listen to something like that? It's so funny that the people who buy into this and will make sure to go out of their way to tell us that cases are up and we have to mask up, they so confidently laugh at people who believe in, quote, religion, as if they don't just have some competing religion. They go, there are people who just believe things without looking into them. You believe the people who have the worst credibility on the planet, and you inject yourself with what they tell you to. And look, maybe it's the right thing to do, but it's the confidence that they have in this. All I do really is I'll just tell you what I told Chrissy. I said, show me, but before I listen to anything else, because it's been a while. It's been like what, March of 2020 or something wild. I go, before you tell me anything, I want you to cite, preferably, an expert in the field. Now, this expert has to at least have guessed that lockdowns in America would show no difference in results between similar states at similar times that had different mask credentials. You know, some places having mask mandates, others not. They would have had to have predicted that there would be no correlation between mandates, lockdowns, and low numbers. They would have had to have predicted that a year after the vaccines, we'd have more cases than ever. And they would have had to have predicted that, or they would have had to have been open to the concept that this was released from a lab in Wuhan as the result of gain of function research. Now, if you get Tony Fauci under oath talking to Rand Paul, he'll say that it doesn't count as gain of function when you take an animal virus and increase its ability to infect humans. He says that's not gaining a function. That doesn't count as gain of function. So they lie to you. The point is, if you have the most basic criteria for these people, you find out they're self-interested. All the priests and rabbis that we laugh at, they're as biased as the military industrial complex, the medical industrial complex. It's the same thing. We're all human. We all have these pressures, these hurdles in life that it's hard to be the one person standing up against because there's no psychological reward. And it's so easy to say, well, if I didn't do it, then maybe someone else will. And if I lose my job, my family's screwed, so I'm just going to go along. So these things are so important, and that's why at the Libertarian Institute, we try to provide, some educational materials for free that help people escape this or find some agorist alternatives to hurdles like this that they constantly come across in life.
And just to teach them that they can be brave for a minute. I was going to laugh how you said about the religion thing. These people, I've had people even I knew personally say, why are you looking stuff up? Why are you even just like listening to people on YouTube? Why are you this and that? And I'm like, what do you mean? Why? What are you doing? You're not looking stuff up. You're not trying to like figure things like, I'm like, oh, very smart people don't look things up. And I'm like, how did that happen all of a sudden where very smart people don't look things up?
This is literally the anti-scientific mindset that they're so often criticizing. And it's like, well, it's important that people don't just blindly believe the Pope. What we need is, a Protestant Reformation for people to read the Bible themselves, see what's in the book, and come to their own rational interpretation. This is the Enlightenment concept. Well, the people today say the same exact thing. So one of the things that's at least somewhat of a red pill moment for a lot of the people I come across is I ask them, is it possible that the 1 billion Muslims on the planet and the 1 billion Christians/Catholics on the planet are wrong about the nature of reality and the creation of the universe? This isn't something small. Could all of them be wrong? Could all of the priests and all of the pastors and all the rabbis and all of the imams, could they all be wrong, really? Because they're experts. So unless you're an expert in theology, you can't have an opinion on religion. Immediately they see, well, if you're an expert, you also probably went into that field because you have a big bias. Same exact thing applies. Now, it's not like they say, oh, well, thank you, 25-year-old who's telling me this. I've been wrong for 30 years. Where do I donate? They never say that. The point is, you're increasing the amount of insecurity that they have in their position and decreasing the likelihood that they're going to confidently spread this to everyone else. If say, for example, you're at a party in high school and people are, let's say, drinking alcohol, using cocaine, smoking marijuana, the confidence that you have is because the people around you are not going to call the cops and they're not going to scold you. So if you have that same confidence with regard to, let's call it the COVID regime for the time being, well, then you're not going to be walking on eggshells around anyone. Oh, are you wearing the mask? Are you doing the vax? Are you listening to Fauci's latest whatever? And that sort of delegitimizing the ruling class is so vitally important because then they don't have evidence to do things they otherwise would do. If you remember, Joe Biden ran on having a nationwide mask mandate. Now, he never went through with this. Now, why
And
would
a
you not?
shutdown, and like 100, and a shutdown too, I believe, didn't he?
You know what? That I don't remember the details of that, but I remember that was one of his big selling points. And then he just never went through with it. Now, the reason that it's important that he didn't go through with that is there would have been so much disobedience. There would have been so much difficulty in enforcing such a law that it would have totally delegitimized the state. And people would have said, well, if we can just not wear masks and not do, what else can we do? Just like biggest examples in America is, I want to say it was 1993. There was a group of churchgoers in Waco, Texas, who just resisted the FBI like they would any other group who showed up to their house when they had been totally peaceful with guns and started shooting at their dogs. They had resisted them like you would anyone else. The FBI was standing outside of their church for 51 days. They had new people round the clock. They said, we cannot let this stand, because what they needed was a show of force against resistors to show people this is what happens when you resist. And eventually, 51 days later, the FBI went in with CS gas banned by the Geneva Convention, and they murdered the kids. They murdered basically all the civilians inside simply for resisting when the ATF went in there originally on a fake gun charge. But Janet Reno lied under oath and said babies were being beaten inside of the church. So the reason that I brought up that example is because it's so important that 1 or 2% of people don't resist, because if that happens, well, then it sets an example. That's the Rosa Parks example. It's not like we remember the names of the 20 million people who resisted Jim Crow. It's like, I'm sorry?
You froze up for a second. I think you're caught up now. You start.
Oh, did I? I'm making sure I got the solid connection here.
You're good now, for me at least.
Okay, all right. Point is, if someone as brave as Rosa Parks or Malcolm X or the Branch Davidians is willing to stand up, it really sets an example and delegitimizes the enforcement capabilities of the ruling class. And that's why I appreciate agorists so much, who are willing to say, you know, screw the law in such a flippant way.
That's true. You're getting some compliments in the chat. I don't know if you can see the chat at all, but
I'm actually not able to see the chat. Well, now you just brought someone. Escape from Babylon. That's a good name.
He likes that. That's what I say too, because you do, like, you're so passionate about it. You put it out there. You gather your thoughts so well and put it out there. I was gonna say also, like, did you ever see A Bug's Life, the movie?
God, it was so long ago. What is remind me of the moral of the story? It's with the ants and the grasshoppers, and there's a big tree, and the grasshoppers come back every year, and the ants feel like they have to feed the grasshoppers just out of this, like, that's tradition. The ants work their butts off to feed the grasshoppers. But then the ants start figuring out, like, one of them figures out, like, we don't need to feed the grasshoppers, you know? And then one of the grasshoppers, who, funny enough, in the movie is Kevin Spacey, like, says, no, you can't let one of them stand up, because if one of them stands up, then they'll all stand up, you know? And that's, like, the whole lesson in that, too. It's like, it's the cartoon version of the similar thing. Unfortunately, Waco really happened, but. And Ruby Ridge, so same shit, too. It's rough. Well, what happened was they had such bad PR after Lon Horiuchi killed Randy Weaver's wife at Ruby Ridge while she was holding her son or daughter, I forget. But they had that, and then they had a terrible sexual harassment scandal. So what they wanted was an easy PR stunt, which they called Operation Showtime. And I had a guy, one of the survivors who was in the church, a guy named David Thibodeau, great guy. He was on my show. He had explained this to me. They had had this Operation Showtime where they were calling the media ahead of time to bring cameras so they could go into this church and, quote, rescue the children. So it was rescue the children from this, terrible brainwashing cult. No different than anything that goes on at any government school in America with critical race theory and saying slavery was invented by Thomas Jefferson in 1776 and all this other nonsense. So it was originally just supposed to be a PR stunt. It was never, let's go murder people. It was, oh God, they resisted. If they resist, well, this is going to set an example for everyone else. And that's how good people can justify their bad actions by saying, well, what I'm really doing is not just my action alone. What I'm really doing is setting a larger example. I'm fighting a greater cause, and that's why my actions are justified. And really, it's not me who's doing it. It's this thing called the law. And if people work through a mechanism called government, well, then that's just what the law is. And if they don't like it, they can move. They have completely gotten themselves in this sort of cult-like belief where they're not responsible for their actions. How on God's green earth are you, the only person who directly controls your body, not responsible for your own actions? That's how deep this cult of statism goes. It's not just, something I have a hobby against, even though I do have a hobby against it. The point is that it completely strips people of their one life on earth. It totally takes them away from their humanity and gives them this blank check to violently stop other humans from pursuing their happiness on earth. So it's really terrible. And I don't even know what topic we're on at this point. I was just going to say, and that's what I focus on my channel. So subscribe on Odyssey because I got 2 strikes on YouTube at the moment.
What was it? Where the strikes from? Well, I guess maybe don't say. Well, you could say it on mine.
Original. No, that's fine. So I had 1 strike, and that's been lifted from a copyright, and that was, gosh, I want to say, you know what? It was a copyright on a video titled like 15 Proven Conspiracies, something from really long ago. The second one was a discussion I had with James Perloff called History is a Lie. Go find it on Odyssey. We discuss his book, The Shadows of Power, which is an expose on the Council on Foreign Relations. Then the third one was, I forget, it was an article by...
Just being too cool. You're just too cool. They just give you a strike.
I wish. A guy named Phil Magnus. I was just reading an article by a guy named Phil Magnus titled 12 Times the Lockdowners Were Wrong. So in other words, Phil Magnus, PhD, works at the American Institute for Economic Research. He wrote a great book called The 1619 Project, A Critique, which the Institute for Economic Research published, where he said, hey, all of these experts that you people proudly obey, just so you know, not only have they been wrong in the past, they've been wrong in the past about the COVID virus. So it's not like, well, you say government is right, but government was wrong about WMDs in Iraq. That's not enough. That's a little too vague. It's a little too general. He literally looks at the human beings like Neil Ferguson, people like Tony Fauci, Bill de Blasio, Andrew Cuomo, some of the biggest advocates of our current COVID strategy. And he says, these people have terrible credibility. So that was one. I also quoted the World Health Organization's Twitter account. This would have been in January of 2020 when they had said, China, studies in China have confirmed that. Are we on YouTube right now? Because this might actually get it banned.
Yeah, it is going to YouTube.
So the World Health Organization had said that studies in China have confirmed that COVID cannot be transmissible from one person to another. And because I had quoted this extensive idea that was first perpetrated by the World Health Organization's Twitter account, I was banned for spreading misinformation. Now, when you appeal this, you can say, well, hi, my name's Keith. I've had tons of videos on here. I'd really appreciate knowing exactly where I verified, where I violated community standards. This way I don't do it again in the future. Yeah, you got to have some fake excuse to really give them a good rationale. So you say, I really want to make sure that I don't do this to you guys again. Tell me exactly where in this video that I'm appealing the strike for that I violated it so I can't do it again. And they never tell you. They never told me for any of the videos the exact reason. Now, if this was some innocent explanation, they'd say, hey, Keith, don't say A, B, and C. And in this video, you said C. And that's why we took it down. We just want to tell you so you don't keep spreading this false information. We're just here to help. Once you recognize this is more or less, yes, it's a conspiracy at the highest level, but it's such a foundational, unjustifiable bias on so many people who really are not in on it. They're just more or less lackeys who have no justification and are just more or less cogs in the machine. Like the guy in the video who worked at the pharmacy who said, yeah, here's the side effect list for the vaccine. And then he pulls it all out and it's all blank. And he goes, look, the only reason I do this is because I'm told to. Well, that is the fake justification that a lot of people have. And you know what? That's terrible. But you know what? Just don't have the confidence you claim to have when you're pushing this thing on so many millions of strangers. You don't know what their, side effects are. Every time I watch TV, there's a medicine that's being promoted. It's ask your doctor about Chantix. Side effects include death and chlamydia and your dick falling off and your legs shriveling. I mean, it's like the most crazy nonsense for all this stuff. But all of a sudden, no, they found Jesus with the jab. Look, I never would bitch about this stuff if employers weren't mandating it and governments across the planet weren't saying people had to have it for some reason or another. I never picked a fight with, what was it, Mises, Mumps, and Rubella vaxes. But the fact that they're getting legal immunity, the fact that people have no incentive to expose this stuff, because the media, of course, will call you a crazy anti-vaxxer and say, Ashley Babbitt was an anti-vaxxer, so the cop who shot the unarmed woman really wasn't killing anyone of value. It's like, God, do I know where this is going? So, yeah, this is all horrible, and that's why I really like going to LP events where you can shake hands with some sane people in the world and sort of escape the mind control.
Yeah, it's definitely always a nice break just to be around normal people. Obviously, we were all like, that was just fun because there was all sorts of cool people. I didn't know you'd be there because I didn't know you're from Arizona. I saw you. I was like, oh my God, he's there. But yeah, it's just fun to be around all those people for sure. I had a party here from my Twitter friends on Saturday night. Like, I try to have a little group get together every now and then. And just, you have to be around normal people because, I know Arizona, you said the restaurants, the servers are still wearing masks and stuff, but there's not a mask mandate in Arizona, right?
No, there is a lot of employers who are doing it. Yeah, a lot of supermarkets and restaurants, but every time I go to a restaurant, it's always with an unmasked staff. So I honestly forgot which places have these requirements, because sometimes you'll see half the staff has them and the other half doesn't. But look, that's what you get when you give governments this blank check to control government education, where they're totally taught since like the youngest age, he who is right is he who agrees with authority, who is the teacher in that stance. Okay, well, no, yeah, if you do that for 12 to 16 years of, their brain developing, they're going to grow up and say, I'm a good person because I agree with authority for the same reason. They're not going to have any competing authorities within their own head of, I actually have some worth and maybe I'm as smart as those other people, or maybe they have biases just like I do. You're going to say, I follow those in charge and that's why I'm a good person and I pledge my allegiance to them. So sadly, it's not just government that this has an effect on, it's the employers and people in their personal lives too. It's how you get the idiot lackeys to hate their neighbor instead of hating the Tony Fauci's and Bill Gates's and Lloyd Austin's of the world.
Yeah, I agree. I made a video today. I didn't post it yet, but it was like okay, if you've been fooled, then you've been messed up. Like, be mad at the people who fucking tricked you and fooled you. Don't be mad at me. Because I haven't even been allowed to go so many places. So, like, I'm not spreading anything. Like, I'm not even allowed to be there. So, it's just stupid.
There was a great Malone quote where he had said, it's, I've studied a lot of history, and this is the first time that the inefficacy of a pharmaceutical product is being blamed on the people who didn't take it. And that is such a brilliant point. It's like, you could think that the progressives that are so angry at all this, that they would say, God damn you, Big Pharma, for not doing your job. Damn you, Johnson & Johnson and Merck and AstraZeneca and Pfizer and Moderna. Damn you for not producing what we thought you could produce. But instead they're saying, oh, this neighbor of mine never masks up and it's his fault that other people are sick. They just don't even know. It's never like they have to prove it. It's never like this person got COVID and we prove, and until we blame it on anyone, we want to prove that it came from a non-vax person, and then we hate that person. They just undiscriminately blame those who are skeptical of Big Pharma, who under Obama's administration and Trump's, the progressives were saying are so evil that they're just seeking profit, and we need the state to monopolize healthcare because these people are just so evil money seekers. Well, yeah, it turns out they're just as evil as, everyone else. They're sort of self-interested and willing to disregard the the costs that they will impose on people. So it's important we have not only competition, but the freedom to disassociate. So if you don't have that, well, then therein lies the foundational issue. Not people who are skeptical, but the people who don't face any repercussions for their bad products, bad services, immoral actions, etc.
Enforce just the taking away consent and bodily autonomy, basically, or they're trying to go there. But yeah, they hated Big Pharma just a couple years ago. Like you said, everybody hated Big Pharma. They're greedy. They're terrible. I've even seen some posts recently about people complaining about the cost of insulin and stuff still. So I'm like, they can see it somewhat still, but they're totally fine with the Big Pharma using the government to bully everybody into using this one product. But the mind control is just amazing. It really, truly is amazing what's happened. It's just wild. I don't know if it's from social media. I'm sure is a huge part of it. I'm like, yeah, I guess if Hitler had Facebook, he probably would have won if he would have been able to use algorithms back in the day or something, like now we're just there now with this other weird way, but I don't get it. I don't get how they hated it just a couple years ago and hate the greed and hate that kind of stuff, but it's fine for this.
It goes to show you the level of mind control and what Orwell called doublethink, that people can have two ideas, one of which necessarily contradicts the other, and just not have any problem with it. They'll be like, we need government because in the free market there's monopolies. Well, you believe government should monopolize the money supply? Do you believe government should monopolize law and order? Do you think government monopolize compulsory education? You're explicitly saying they should monopolize healthcare when you call it single payer. Mono means one, poly means seller. So one seller is a monopoly, and you're calling for single, one payer. That's literally a monopoly. And in every other case, they'll say, well, monopolies give us worse quality and higher prices. Also, the government should monopolize, and then they'll list off 50 goddamn things. So, yeah, this sort of mind control, it's one part mind control and a logical issue, and another part an emotional issue where they get people to feel this sort of affection for the state and the flag that they would only have for a child. Like the only other time you'll see people do this is like when their child is like a terrible person who they'll just blindly defend under any circumstances. No matter what they do, parents will defend the child. It only comes to like the state. So when governments murder millions of people in wars, they'll say, well, maybe we need to fix government. But if like a company allegedly gouges, well, that should be outlawed and there should be sanctions and people should go to jail and we're so uppity and we need regulation and we need committees and all this other stuff. But when governments murder people, when they cage people for victimless crimes, for drug laws and drug offenses, Scott was talking about, I don't know if you know who the guy is, but there is a guy whose father is serving 65 years for cocaine possession. And I mean, that's your life. That's your one life on planet Earth being spent in a frickin' cell with a bunch of people who, for all you know, are murderers and rapists and all this terrible nonsense. That's what the state is doing to people because they claim the right to rule totally innocent bystanders. It's not like the rule we have for anyone else. Anyone can defend against a rapist or a murderer or a home invader. But the state, they just get to write words down on paper just like this and then enforce them as law. And anyone who disobeys the words on paper gets caged and shot if they resist. And we thank the shooter for their service. Just like the Bradley Manning, Julian Assange case. Julian Assange is in, some Ecuadorian embassy prison, can't leave because the U.S. will kidnap him. Ed Snowden can't come back to America and is stuck in Russia because there's no treaty between the U.S. and Russia. What they did, Snowden was the NSA, and then Chelsea Manning was in prison for exposing the collateral murder video. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's just explicit murder caught on video that the troops are probably doing all the time over there, and which is giving them the PSD and giving them the alcohol problems and everything else that we should probably sympathize with. They expose that. And they're the ones who go to jail. They're the villains in this. And Trump, talking to Candace Owens, is like, I was thinking about doing it. There was one more than the other that I wanted to pardon, but, it just wasn't going to work out. The best guy, the most anti-deep state establishment guy that I've seen in my 25 years, he wasn't willing to do it. We've got to give up this terrible cult of statism. And then the second part of that was, yes, the people who expose the crime, they go to jail. But where is the search for the soldiers who committed this evil murder, who committed this terrible crime? Certainly we're so horrified by shootings, which I think we always should be. And there's not a care in the world to find these people. Because if they put on camouflage and work for the government, well, then it's not really murder. Well, why do you think people across the planet hate you? hate you for no reason. Well, it's because you're bragging about a government that is of the people, for the people, and by the people. And then the government commits atrocities. Well, then, of course, they see you as that. Now, if you'd call it some monarchy who was occupying America, well, maybe they wouldn't blame you so much. So, yeah, this terrible double standard people have for the state and the contractors who get state approval and big pharma. It's not only deadly, it ruins the soul of the people who support it because it gets good people to justify things they would never justify under any circumstances.
And people still try to justify. Even today, I was saying, they'll say, the troops will say they won't do anything against the U.S., but if they'll follow if they have to follow orders to go to Russia, for example, if they're going to send everybody over there, what's to keep them from following the orders and doing stuff here to us, And they're like, well, they won't because they're in an oath and then they'd have to go to a court. And I'm like, okay, what? No, they can do whatever they want and they're allowed to do whatever they want. There's never any retribution, really. A few examples every now and then, which are examples for probably other reasons, for more nefarious reasons that they want to teach a lesson that these people shouldn't talk out or speak out. But I don't know, I don't trust any of it. And then someone's like, and I'm like, if that's the whole about remembering history, it was an army, the Nazis were an army at one point and they're following the rule of the land or the law, and that's our army too. What's the difference in it in the end? Obviously we think we're better, but I don't know how to tell the difference between it, if you know what I mean.
Well, people definitely see it as something so different from them that it could never apply. Well, in America, there was something called the Indian Removal Act, which was pretty horrific, and mass murder of Native Americans was more or less recognized as justifiable. If you look at what's the famous Native American massacre that is slipping my mind.
Wounded
It
Knee or Sand Creek?
Wounded Knee, yes.
Yeah.
It was originally them going to um, confiscate the weapons of the Lakota Indians, and the Indians resisted, as any sane person would, by natural law, and as anyone would under the Second Amendment. But the state didn't recognize it as legitimate because they more or less othered them. So just as we say, well, that was the American South. Well, that was the Germans. Well, that was the Soviets. People will often other uh, different demographics just because it's easier to say, well, that was then and this is now and that's totally different and they're stupid and I'm smart. Well, had you been in their situation, say that you were in the German situation and you had Britain declare war on you, America declare war on you, and Russia, granted after the German politicians did the same thing, wouldn't you blame the most powerful people on the planet who were under your jurisdiction in Poland and Russia and see those as enemy combatants? Just look at how they turned Muslims into enemies after 2001. And then they turned anyone on the right into an enemy after January 6th. Just as they can, the media and the politicians can obsess over something and create a fictitious enemy that is so evil that even if we commit atrocities, well, it's only to fight this evil that's so bad that if we did nothing, this evil would take over. So look, even if we kill 100,000 Japanese people in one day with one bomb, it's better than if we did nothing. If you can get people to justify that, you can get them to justify anything. And if you're wondering what you would have done in the time of Jim Crow or the time of slavery, well, a lot of people alive today were alive during the American draft, which was in up until 1972, which is the most evil form of forced labor known to man. It's like it makes cotton picking look so good when you're getting shot at and your limbs are getting blown off and you're getting PTSD and you're forced to kill other people. So it's not that easy. Or if you look at what's going on in Yemen, you and I saw Scott. Did you see Scott Horton's speech at the Arizona LP?
I didn't get to see that.
Oh my God, it was so good. He said, people asked me to talk about Woodrow Wilson, but instead I'm going to talk about Yemen. And then he goes on this, tirade about the war in Yemen and the U.S.-Saudi coalition that's taking place there. A lot of civilians are bearing the cost of what the rulers did, typical of any conflict. The point is that governments are doing today what you would look back at governments in the past are doing and saying, oh gosh, the people really should have stood up. Well, it's so difficult and it's so costly that it's much easier, both psychologically and financially, for you to say, well, that's their problem. Well, I'm doing the best I can. The problem is people in those times were saying the same thing to themselves. And that's why it's important to not hate the Germans or the Jews or the whites or the blacks, but it's important to have a principled hatred for some people and not others. People who initiate violence against other people, that's justified to hate them. But to hate people based on race or nationality or class, they'll often say, people who have higher incomes or people who have inherited wealth are evil, and that's who the real enemy is. All of these are arbitrary differences, and that's how they divide the population. So it's like, why should government get tons of power? Well, because that evil demographic over there who's taking all the wealth, or that evil demographic called Muslims who just kill people for no reason, those are all scams. They're all goals to create a fake enemy. And now Russia came out of nowhere, just as the COVID narrative's collapsing. Well, Russia's about to invade Ukraine. And even though we spent 20 years in Afghanistan and the Taliban took over 11 days after the 20-year war ended, we're going to get these Russians. We can take on a nuclear power. Can't take on the Taliban, who doesn't have nukes, but we could take on a nuclear power. That should be done real soon. It's in our vital interest to do so. All of these things, they won. The first part of the scam is getting you to have a double standard for the state, and the second is to think your enemy is people that are white or Jews or Russian or Iraqi or some fill in the accident of birth. That's not it. The division is people who achieve their ends in life peacefully and voluntarily, and people who achieve their ends violently in the absence of a free market who use violence and coercion. That's really the main difference that I try to focus on when I'm talking to people.
I like you're spitting fire. Love it.
I did a lot of listening at the meeting today, so
so you've been like waiting to get
I'm
it
ready.
out.
I held back like 20 things that I just wanted to scream about.
You can keep going. If
I'm
there's
like,
anything else, just keep
force
going.
mommy tonight. I'll let it out then. Don't worry.
Yeah, let it all. I told you, I'm like, I didn't have a topic or anything, but I'm like, you can just teach me and talk about whatever, like, because I just love listening to you. So whatever else you want to go off on, you just go off on it.
I've said enough. We've gone for 45 minutes. It's already a Curb episode. The new seasons are 45 minutes. So let's I can keep the rants to that unless you have anything else.
No, I mean, like, yeah, if that helped get it out of your system pretty good, you feel good about it.
I wanted to have a good Force Mommy appearance. What else is the criteria? What else do I have to do?
You did great. Everyone was loving it. They're like, I wish you would. Someone was talking about a book. I don't know if you've heard about this book or if that sounds familiar to you.
Average cops sat in Poland after the occupation and how they turned into evil monsters. I am not sure. No book rings a bell. In the psychology or the political department. Yeah, nothing comes to mind. Sorry.
He'll have to look that up, Squirrel. You have to figure it out. No, I mean, if you got it out, I'm good. I'm glad you came on my show and you're not like, no, I don't want to go to this dumb girl show. So thanks for coming on. It's great.
Anytime, yeah.
And I love that.
I was glad I got to meet you in person.
Yeah, that was so fun. That was just random fun. And I still love that video that Jeremy took because it's like you know, going around the campfire. Like, it's so good. It is so good. It's like
I'm just zoning out on my phone. What an unfair video. We're at the convention like all day, and I'm talking to people, and he catches me at the end looking at my phone, just totally exhausted. I'm like, I didn't just sit on my phone the whole time. I was talking to people. Damn it.
Well, I was looking on my phone while I was talking to someone else. Did you do any like sessions or anything there, or like speeches at the convention? No. You just kind of went.
I actually only went. I was sponsored. I didn't even buy a ticket. So thankfully, a charitable donor offered to give me a free ride there, or else.
Well, that's nice. See, you don't have to be a girl to get things given to you. Everyone says only girls get things like that. Everybody gets stuff like that.
You only have to make 800 videos for free. Other than that, you have to be a woman.
I'm like, have you ever filmed anything with Scott? And you're like, I have like, I don't know, 19 hours. I already said or something.
I did say 19. Thank you for getting the number right.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I haven't watched everything, but I'm getting there. I really liked when you were on.
I put out so much stuff. I don't blame people for missing it.
It's good. I liked you on Jose the other night too, going over the anarchist thing, and like you were talking about the holding the belief when people are like, I believe in free speech, but and it's like, okay, no, right there, you don't. Like, you don't believe in it actually. So I really liked how that was explained. Oh, the book was called Ordinary Men. I guess. I don't know. I never read that book.
I've never heard of that.
Well, thanks for coming on again. And I think you got a couple subscribers, and I put your Odyssey on there and your YouTube and your Twitter.
Thank you very much.
And I hope you have a good rest of your night.
Yes, you as well, Forrest Mommy. It's been a pleasure, both in person and online.
For sure. All right. I'll talk to you. I'll see you on the Twitter side or wherever.
All right. I'll catch you on Twitter. Bye.
Bye.